What if the Shelbys had raised the son of the man who came to destroy them? A 10-year-old boy with Changretta blood, brought up under the roof of the family his father swore to bury. This is the story of the Shelby that history never wrote. Birmingham, the autumn of 1926. The vendetta is over. Luca Changretta came across an ocean with a black hand and a list of Shelby names, and he crossed most of them off before the family finally closed around him and ended it. The war the two families fought has cost both of them everything that mattered. The Shelbys buried John. The Changrettas buried Luca. And in a cold house in a part of Birmingham that smells of the canal, there is one thing left over that nobody planned for: a boy. His name is Marco. He is 10 years old. He came with his father from New York because Luca Changretta did not believe in leaving family behind. And now Luca is dead, and the boy sits at a table in a safe house, with a Shelby man standing over him who does not know what he is supposed to do with a child. Word goes up the chain, the way everything goes up the chain, until it reaches the only man who decides anything. Tommy comes himself. He stands in the doorway and looks at the boy, and the boy looks back at him with eyes that Tommy knows, because he has been looking into eyes like that since France, the eyes of someone who has lost everything and is waiting to find out whether the world intends to take the rest. Marco does not cry. That is the thing Tommy notices. A child who has watched his father killed and does not cry has already learned the family business. "How long are you going to make me sit here?" Marco says, "Before you do it." Tommy does not pretend not to understand. "You think I brought myself across Birmingham to shoot a child in a kitchen," he says. "No, you don't think that. You're hoping it, because being shot is simpler than the thing you're actually afraid of. And what's that? That nobody's going to. That you're going to have to get up tomorrow, and the day after, and work out who you are with no father telling you and no enemy to hate. That's the hard one, son. I've watched grown men choose a bullet over that question." Tommy turns his cap in his hands. "Your father had an answer for everything. A name, a grudge, a list. It made him feel like a man with a purpose right up until it put him in the ground. I'm not going to give you an answer. I'm going to give you something worse and better. I'm going to give you a choice, and you're going to spend the rest of your life finding out what you do with it." Marco stares at him. It is not what a Changretta is supposed to hear from a Shelby. It is not what anyone is supposed to hear from Thomas Shelby. "Why?" the boy says. "Because somebody did it for me once," Tommy says, "and didn't live to see if it took. I'd like to do better by you than the world did by me. Now get your coat. It's cold, and you're coming home." "You know who I am," Tommy says. "It is not a question. You're the one who killed my father," Marco says. His English is American, sharp at the edges, and my grandfather before him. "My father told me. He said when I was older I'd finish it." The Shelby man by the wall shifts his weight. Everyone in the room understands what is supposed to happen now. There is a code, older than either family, that says you do not leave a blood enemy's son alive to grow into a blood enemy's gun. Luca would have done it. Luca's father would have done it. It is the cleanest thing, and the coldest, and it is exactly what 30 years of this life have trained every man in that room to expect. Tommy looks at the boy for a long time, and then he does the thing that no one in the room can believe. He pulls out the chair across from Marco and he sits down, slow, like a man with a bad knee, and he takes off his cap and sets it on the table between them. "Your father was right about one thing," Tommy says. "I did kill your grandfather. 1919, before you were born. And it started a war that ate both our houses and gave nothing back to anybody. You want to know how many of mine are in the ground because of a thing I started before you could walk? My brother John, he had children, Marco. They're orphans now, same as you, same exact thing. Different name on the stone." He leans forward. "So here's what your father got wrong. He told you that when you were older you'd finish it. But there's no finishing it. There's only feeding it. It eats, and it eats, and it never gets full. And one day there's nobody left at the table but a boy who can't remember why he's angry." Tommy stands. He puts his cap back on. "You're not going to finish anything. You're coming home with me. And we're going to find out if a Changretta can be raised into something other than a knife. That is the divergence." In the life that was, the boy would have been put quietly on a boat back to whatever was left of the Changrettas in New York, or worse. and the cycle would have waited a generation and started again. But here, in the life that might have been, Thomas Shelby walks out of a canal-side safe house with the son of his enemy's hand on his shoulder and brings him under the only roof in Birmingham where the boy's name is a death sentence, and dares the house to make him family instead. Tommy brings the boy to Arrow House himself, in the back of the car, in silence, because he has not worked out what he will say when he walks a Changretta through that door. The family is already there. Word travels faster than any car in Birmingham. They are standing in the hall when Tommy comes in with the boy at his side, and the silence that falls is the worst the house has ever held. Esme is there, John's widow, in her black, her children behind her skirts. She knows whose blood the boy is, and the whole family watches her, because if anyone in the world has the right to speak first, it is the woman the Changrettas made a widow. Esme looks at Marco for a long, terrible moment. Then she looks at Tommy, and her voice is flat and carrying. "You bring his blood into this house," she says, while my John's still settling in his grave. Tommy does not look away from her. "I bring a child," he says, "same as yours. Made an orphan by the same stupid war." Esme's mouth works. She looks again at the boy, at how small he is, at the way he has braced himself, the way her own children brace when the men shout. And something in her, some terrible, generous thing grief has not quite killed, gives way. She does not forgive. She will not forgive for years. But she gathers her own children, and she says, to them, loud enough for the room, "You'll not torment him. He didn't do it any more than you did." And she walks out. It is not a blessing, but it comes from the one person entitled to curse instead. And the house knows it. The house does not take it well. Arthur is the first, and the worst. He comes into the study that night with the drink already in him, and the grief always in him. And he puts both fists on Tommy's desk. "John's not cold," Arthur says. "His kids are still asking where their dad is. And you've brought the spawn of the men who did it into our house, to sleep in our beds, to eat at our table." His voice cracks down the middle. "What's the matter with you, Tommy? What did France take out of you that you can do this?" "Sit down, Arthur." "I won't sit down. I'll put the boy on a boat tonight. I'll do it myself. You'll touch a hair on that child's head," Tommy says, very quietly. "And you and me are done. Brothers or not. It stops Arthur the way only that ever stops him." Tommy comes around the desk. "I know what they took from us. I carried John's coffin same as you. But I have sat in a hole in the ground in France and watched men kill each other's sons for a war that started before any of them were born. And I swore if I ever got out, I'd not do that to a child again. The boy didn't kill John. The thing that killed John is the same thing that'll kill the next Shelby and the next Changretta forever, and the only way to end it is to do the one thing nobody in this family has ever had the stomach for." He looks his brother in the eye. "Mercy. To the one person who'd never expect it." Arthur is shaking. "And if you're wrong? If you raise him up, and he turns out his father's son after all, and he puts a knife in one of ours in 20 years? Then I'll have been wrong," Tommy says. "But I'll have been wrong trying to stop it, instead of right helping it along." Later, when Arthur has gone to drink himself somewhere quieter, Polly comes and stands in the study door. She has heard all of it. "Pretty speech," she says. "Mercy. Ending the cycle. You almost believed it yourself." She comes in and pours herself a drink without asking. "Now tell me the real reason, Thomas, the one you didn't give Arthur." "Because I've known you since you were in short trousers, and you don't do a single thing in this world for one reason when you can do it for 3. Tommy looks at her a long moment. With anyone else, he would hold the line. With Polly, there has never been any point. "Because I started it," he says. 1919. I put a bullet in an old man over money and pride, and a war that had already made me into something I can't wash off. And every grave since, John's, theirs, all of it, runs back to that one morning and my one hand. I can't undo it. I can't give John back. But I can take the one thing that was meant to be the next bullet in the chain and make it into something that isn't a bullet. It's the only thing I've ever done that might weigh on the right side of the ledger when they come to count it." Polly is quiet. Then she says the thing that decides it. "I lost children, Tommy. Taken off me, given to strangers, raised to be people I'd never have known. Her voice does not shake. Polly's voice never shakes. That is how you know it costs her. If one stranger in this world had done for one of mine what you're asking this family to do for that boy upstairs, I'd have died easier. She finishes her drink. Raise him. I'll help you. God forgive us both if we're wrong. It is Polly who decides it, in the end. Because in this family the men decide what happens, and Polly decides what it means. She has lost more than any of them. Children taken, a son found, and nearly lost again. A life spent holding the family together with both fists, while the men went out and made more graves. She comes to the boy's room late that first night, and she finds him awake, sitting up, watching the door, the way a soldier watches a door. She does not turn the light on. She sits on the end of the bed. You're waiting to see if someone comes to kill you in the dark, she says. Aren't you? Marco says nothing. I know that wait, Polly says. I've done it. In this very house. You learn it young in families like ours, and once you've learned it, you never quite stop. She is quiet a moment. I'm going to tell you something, Marco, and you're not going to believe it tonight, and that's all right. Believe it slow. Nobody is coming to kill you in the dark. Not in this house. Not while I'm in it. She stands. At the door she stops. My name's Elizabeth. Everyone calls me Polly. You'll call me whatever you like. But if a man in this house ever frightens you, even a Shelby, even Arthur, you come to me. There's not one of them I can't put back in his place. Sleep now. And the boy, who has not slept properly since a man put a gun to his father in a cinema in New York, sleeps. The cascade of raising him is slow, and it is told in scenes, year on year, because you do not undo a vendetta in a night. You undo it in 1,000 small mornings. The first year, Marco is a stranger in a house of enemies, and he behaves like one. He steals. He lies. He tests them, the way a beaten dog tests a kind hand, waiting for the kindness to turn out to be a longer cruelty. He runs away twice, and both times it is Finn who finds him. Finn, the youngest Shelby, close enough to the boy's own age, that he has not yet learned to hate properly. The second time Finn finds him at the train station with a stolen pound note and a child's plan to get to Liverpool in a boat, and Finn does not drag him back. Finn sits down next to him on the cold platform and shares a bag of chips and says, "You can go if you want. Nobody's going to stop you. But I'll tell you what's at the other end of that boat. More men with guns who'll want you to be your dad. At least here, some of us want you to be you." And Marco, 10 years old and exhausted with running, eats the chips and goes home. It is Finn who teaches him to be a boy instead of a weapon. They fish the canal. They get into trouble that is ordinary trouble, the kind that ends in a clip round the ear instead of a coffin. Slowly, across that first hard year, the thing in Marco that was wound like a spring begins to unwind. And one day, a small day, an ordinary day, he laughs at something, out loud, without thinking, and the whole kitchen goes quiet because nobody in the house has heard the Changretta boy laugh before, and the sound of it is the sound of a war, ending one child at a time. There are markers, across those years, that the family would only recognize as turning points long after. The first Christmas, when Marco is given a stocking like the rest, and does not understand it, and Finn has to explain that this is just a thing the house does, and the boy holds the orange and the few shillings like they might be taken back. The day, 2 years in, when a shopkeeper calls him the Shelby boy by mistake, and Marco does not correct him, and walks home 3 inches taller. The afternoon, Tommy, almost as a test, sits him down with the ledgers, the real ones, and watches the boy's eyes move over the columns, and sees the same cold, quick understanding he once saw in Polly, in Michael, in himself, and thinks, there it is, the family mind, and it doesn't care whose blood carries it. And the night that settles it for good, the night a rival firm, thinking the Shelbys soft and distracted, sends men to the yard. And it is Marco, 14 and quick, who hears them first and gets to Finn and the alarm before the family is caught sleeping. He could have stayed in his bed. He could have let the enemy do his vendetta for him. He didn't. He woke the house. When Tommy asks him why, later the boy shrugs and says, "They were coming for my family. My family." He says it without thinking, then hears himself say it, and the two of them sit with the size of those 2 words in the dark kitchen, and neither spoils it by saying anything more. It is after that night that Tommy begins, quietly, to teach him. Not the violence, the family has enough hands for violence, but the other thing, the thing that actually keeps a family alive, the patience, the reading of men, the long game. He takes Marco to the meetings and lets him sit at the back and watch. Afterward, in the car, he asks the boy what he saw. And at first Marco sees only the obvious, who shouted, who threatened. But across the months, the boy's eye sharpens. Until one evening, leaving a tense room, he says, before Tommy can ask, the quiet one. By the window, he never said a word, and everyone kept looking at him before they answered. He's the one who decides. The loud one's just the noise he hides behind. And Tommy says nothing for a moment, because it is exactly right, and it is exactly the thing it took him a war and 20 years to learn. Your grandfather, Tommy says at last, had that eye. I'll give him that. He saw men clearly. It's a pity what he aimed it at. He glances at the boy. You've got it cleaner than he did. Don't waste it on grudges. Grudges are for men who can't think of anything better to do with their minds. It is the first time Tommy Shelby has ever, out loud, complimented a Changretta. And the boy carries it home like something warm in his coat. Arthur is the longest battle. For 2 years, he cannot be in a room with the boy. He is civil. Tommy's word is law, and Arthur keeps it. But civil is a wall, and the boy feels the wall the way children always feel walls. It breaks, finally, the way things break with Arthur. Suddenly, and over something small. Marco, 12 now, gets into a fight at the edge of the yard. 3 older boys who called him a wop and an orphan and worse. And he comes off badly. And Arthur is the one who finds him bleeding behind the wall. And something in Arthur, the part that is always 1 inch from breaking, the part that loved John most of all, looks at this battered Italian boy and sees, for the first time, not the son of the enemy, but a child who got hurt for a name he didn't choose. Arthur kneels down. He takes out his handkerchief. He cleans the boy's face with hands that have done unspeakable things, and he says, gruff, looking away, "Who were they? The ones that did this," Marco tells him. And Arthur stands up and cracks his neck and says, "Stay there." When he comes back, his knuckles are skinned, and he doesn't explain, and from that day, Arthur Shelby would have walked into fire for the boy. Because Arthur only knows one way to love anyone, and it starts with finding the men who hurt them. After that, Arthur takes the boy in hand, the only way Arthur knows. He teaches him to box, not to brawl, to box, the difference being everything in this family. They go down to the yard in the gray mornings. And Arthur, who has never in his life been able to say a tender word out loud, says all of it, with his fists held up and his voice rough. Keep your guard up. Always your guard. The day you drop it is the day the world's been waiting for. He raps the boy's chin, light. Not because the world's cruel, because the world's quick, and you're a Changretta in a Shelby house, and there's men who'll hate you for both ends of that till you're old. So you keep your guard up, and you keep your feet under you, and you make them come to you. It is a lesson about more than fighting, and they both know it, and neither of them says so, because in this family, the truest things are the ones spoken sideways. The morning Marco finally puts Arthur on the canvas. Fair, clean, a good fast left the older man doesn't see. Arthur lies there, laughing up at the gray sky. The first real laugh anyone's heard from him since John went in the ground. There it is, Arthur says, spitting, grinning, hauling himself up. There's the boy. Took me long enough to find you. And he means it the way fathers mean it, which is to say completely, and without ever once using the word. The midpoint, the place where it nearly all comes undone, arrives when Marco is 15. Because a boy grows, and a growing boy asks questions. And one day a man from the old world finds him, a Changretta cousin, washed up in Birmingham, with a grievance and a long memory, who takes the boy aside and tells him the whole truth, all of it, the parts Tommy told him and the parts Tommy left out. That Tommy Shelby murdered his grandfather in cold blood to start it. That the Shelbys cut down his father in the street like a dog. That the family who raised him, who fed him, and cleaned his face, and taught him to fish, are the same family that orphaned him. And that a real Changretta, a man of honor, would have finished the vendetta years ago, would have waited and grown strong inside the enemy's house, and then struck, the way his father struck. "You've gone soft, boy," the cousin says. "You've let them pet you like a dog. Your blood is screaming, and you've learned not to hear it. Come with me. Be what you were born to be." Marco meets the cousin 3 times, over a fortnight, in secret, at the back of an Italian club that smells of his childhood, of New York, of his father's cologne and cigars. And that is the cruelty of it, that the old world comes to him wrapped in the smell of the one man he is not allowed to grieve, out loud in the Shelby house. The cousin is patient, the way the old world is always patient. He shows the boy a photograph of Luca, young, laughing, a father whose face the boy has started to forget. He tells him stories of Sicily, of his grandfather, of a code that says a son who does not avenge his father is no son at all. "They have made you forget who you are," the cousin says, soft. "That is what the English do. They smile and they feed you. And one morning you wake up and you are theirs. And your own blood is a stranger to you. And the terrible thing is that some of it is true, and the boy knows it is true. And for a fortnight he carries the old world around inside him like a stone and tells no one. And that silence is the most dangerous thing that has happened in the Shelby house in years." And here is the crisis the whole story has been building toward. Marco, 15, comes home that night with all of it burning in him, and he is, for one terrible evening, exactly what Arthur feared, a Changretta in the Shelby house, with the Vendetta awake in his blood. He stands in the doorway of Tommy's study with a knife from the kitchen in his coat, and he has every reason and the cousin's voice in his ears, and he looks at the man who killed his grandfather and started it all. Tommy looks up from his desk. He sees the boy. He sees, perhaps, the shape of the knife. And he does not call for anyone. He does not reach for the drawer. He puts down his pen and folds his hands and says, "He found you then." The cousin. "I wondered when one of them would." He gestures to the chair. "Sit down, Marco. If you're going to do it, you can do it sitting as well as standing. And we should talk first, because a man should always know exactly why he's killing someone. Your father didn't. That was his tragedy." Marco does not sit. "You killed my grandfather." "I did. You started it. I did that too. My father came to make it right." "Your father came to make it bloody," Tommy says. "There's a difference, and it's the whole difference, and you've lived in this house long enough to know it. Making it right would have been him standing in this doorway like you're standing now, asking me why. Making it bloody was a black hand and a list of children's names." He stands, slowly, and he comes around the desk, and he opens his own coat to show there is nothing in it. No gun, no blade, an old man's chest, and a tired heart. "Here, if the blood has to be paid, pay it. I'll not stop you, and I'll not blame you. I owe your family a death, and God knows I've never been afraid of mine." He stops an arm's length away. "But before you do, I want you to look around this house, and I want you to tell me one thing. In 5 years, has anyone here ever treated you like the son of the enemy? Or have they treated you like the son they had room for?" Marco's hand is in his coat, the knife is there, and the whole house holds its breath. Though the house does not know it. Polly at the top of the stairs gone still. Finn frozen in the hall. Arthur with his hand on a door he has not yet opened. And the boy begins to cry. Not a child's cry. A man's, the kind that comes up from somewhere that has been holding for years. Because he has just understood the thing that the cousin's voice could not let him see. That his blood is not screaming for revenge. His blood is screaming because for the first time in his life, it does not want any. Because somewhere across 1,000 ordinary mornings, the Changretta boy died, quietly, the way Tommy promised he would. And a Shelby grew up in his place. And the knife in his coat is not a weapon, it is the last piece of his father. He is afraid to put down. He takes it out. He sets it on the desk. "I don't want to finish it," Marco says, and his voice breaks the way a boy's breaks becoming a man's. "I thought I was supposed to. I thought if I didn't, it meant I never loved him. But I don't want to be the next one in the ground over something that happened before I was born." "No," Tommy says, very gently. "You don't. And that, son, is the bravest thing a Changretta has ever done." He does not embrace the boy. That is not Tommy. But he picks up the knife, and he turns it once in the lamplight, and he puts it away in his own drawer, the way you put away a thing you never want to explain. Your father wanted you to finish the war. You just ended it. Those aren't the same thing. He'd not understand the difference. But your grandmother might have, and Polly does. Go to her. She's been waiting at the top of those stairs the whole time, pretending she wasn't. And Marco climbs the stairs, the way he climbed them the first night. 10 years old and braced for a knife in the dark, except this time the woman at the top is not a stranger, and the wait is over. Polly is sitting on the top step, a cigarette burning down to her knuckle, the silver streak catching the landing light, and she does not get up. She just moves over and pats the cold board beside her, and the young man who almost ended a war sits down next to the woman who promised him 8 years ago that no one would come for him in the dark. I nearly did it, Marco says. His hands are shaking now that it's over. I had the knife. I stood there and I had every reason, and I know, Polly says. I heard. How are you not? Because you didn't, she says simply. Knowing the dark's in you and choosing the light anyway, that's not weakness, son. That's the only kind of strength that's ever meant anything. Any fool can do the thing his blood tells him. It takes a man to do the other. She puts an arm around him, this boy who is not hers by blood, and is entirely hers by every other measure, and she holds him while the shaking goes out of him, the way she held this whole family together for 30 years, with both fists and a cigarette and a refusal, against all evidence, to give up on a single one of them. There, she says into his hair, there, you're one of us now. God help you. You went and chose it. And the cousin from the old world? The cousin is found, 3 days later, on a train back to wherever he came from, with a message delivered by Arthur Shelby personally, and no marks on him that a doctor could find, because some lessons in this family are taught without blood now. And that, too, is new. Here is the cascade running all the way out, into the years and the history beyond, the way the template asks. Because Tommy Shelby raised the son of his enemy instead of ending him, the vendetta does not wait a generation and start again. It dies in that study, with a knife laid on a desk. And the boy who might have been its last weapon becomes, instead, something no one could have planned. A bridge. Marco grows into a young man with a Shelby's cold mind and a Changretta's name and an American tongue. And in the early 30s, when the old Changretta connections in New York come sniffing around Birmingham again, not for vengeance now, but for business, the way the American mob always comes, looking for a door into England, it is Marco who meets them. A Changretta, they trust by blood, raised Shelby by upbringing, fluent in both their worlds. He does not betray the Shelbys to them, and he does not betray them to the Shelbys. He does the harder, rarer thing. He makes a peace that holds, because he is living proof to both families that the cycle can be broken, that a child of one house can grow up in another and choose, freely, which man he wants to be. The meeting that seals it happens in a hotel in London, and it is the mirror of one that, in another telling, happened in Boston. A Changretta across a table from American money, except this time, the Changretta is choosing. The men from New York expect the boy they remember by reputation, a grievance with a face. They get instead a calm young man in a good suit who speaks their language, and the Shelbys both, and lays it out plainly. You came for a door into England? Marco says, I'm the door, but the house on the other side of me isn't the one your fathers fought. That war's over. It died in a study in Birmingham with a knife on a desk, and I'm the one who put the knife down. He lets that sit. You can trade with the Shelbys, through me, and make money the way grown men make money. Or you can come the old way, with the black hand and the lists, and find out that the family who raised a Changretta to make peace will burn the world to keep him. Choose like men with grandchildren, not like men with grudges. And they choose the money, because the old world always chooses the money. When someone gives it away to do so without losing face, and Marco gives them exactly that. The peace holds because it was made by the one man alive who belonged, fully and truly, to both sides of it. There is a thing Marco does, the year he turns 18, that no one asks him to. He goes, alone, to John Shelby's grave. He has grown up in the shadow of that name, the brother the Changrettas killed, the wound the family carried while they raised him anyway, and he has never once stood at the stone. He stands there a long time in the Birmingham rain. And he says, out loud, to a man he never met, the thing he could never say in the house. Your family took me in, Marco says. The men who orphaned me, and the men your people orphaned, all under one roof. And they fed me, and they didn't let me become the thing I was made to be. I know what that cost them. I know what it cost to look at me. I know it cost you. He sets down a single flower. Awkward. A young man who was never taught how to do this. I can't give you back. Nobody can. But I'm going to spend my life making sure no other kid ends up under a stone over the thing that put you under yours. That's the only sorry I've got. I hope it's the right shape. It is Tommy who finds out he went. Tommy who has the boy watched, still, out of an old caution he has never fully shed. And when he hears, he says nothing to anyone, and he goes to his study, and he sits a long time in the dark. Because the boy did, in the rain, at a graveside, the one thing Tommy himself has never managed in 30 years of carrying his dead. He said sorry, and meant it, and asked for nothing back. There is a scene, years on, that holds the whole thing. There is a scene, years on, that holds the whole thing. It is the early 30s. Marco is grown. He stands with Tommy in the garden at Arrow House, both of them in good coats against the cold, watching the light go down over the fields. Marco is taller than Tommy now. He has the Changretta darkness and a way of going still before he speaks that he learned from the man beside him. Do you ever think, Marco says, about what I'd have been if you'd put me on the boat that night, the way everyone wanted you to? Every day for the first year, Tommy says. I had a gun in my desk drawer and a fast horse to the coast, in case I was wrong about you, in case Arthur was right. He almost smiles. I'm not in the habit of being wrong about people, but you were the one I most wanted to be right about, because if I was right about you, it meant the whole thing, all of it, France, the killing, the wars between houses. It meant it could be stopped by a choice, by one man deciding to do the merciful thing instead of the clean one. Marco looks out over the fields. You did it for John, he says. Didn't you? Taking me in. Not in spite of him, for him. Tommy is quiet a long time. John would have wanted to shoot you, he says at last. And then John would have looked at his own kids, growing up without a dad, and he'd have understood. John was a better man than any of us gave him credit for. Yes, I did it for John. I did it so that what killed him would die with him instead of rolling on forever. He puts a hand, briefly, on the young man's shoulder. You've made an honest man of a thing I did out of guilt, Marco. That's more than I had any right to ask. And there is a last image, an ordinary one. That is the whole of what the mercy bought. A Sunday, a year or two on, the long table at Arrow House crowded the way it only gets at Christmas and funerals, except this is neither. This is just a Sunday. Arthur at one end carving badly and arguing about it. Esme's children, grown taller, no longer flinching when the men's voices rise. One of them seated next to Marco and stealing food off his plate, the way you only steal from family. Finn and Marco finishing each other's sentences. Two brothers who share not a drop of blood and would each go into the ground for the other. Lizzie watching it all with the wary fondness of a woman who married into chaos and made a kind of peace with it. And Tommy at the head, gray, quiet, watching his strange, impossible family eat and bicker and live. The widow and the orphan of the same war, seated 3 feet apart and passing the salt, and thinking that of all the things he ever built with money and menace and a razor in his cap, this is the only one he is sure he got right. Nobody makes a speech. Nobody marks it. That is how you know it is real. The Changretta boy passes the bread to John Shelby's daughter, and she says ta, without looking up, and the war that ate 2 families for a generation is so completely over that the children at the table will grow up, never quite believing it was ever real. And here is the one reflective passage, the soul of it, the thing we keep that the others throw away. We are told, all of us, that blood is destiny, that a man is his father, and his father's wars, and the grievances handed down to him like a family ring, that a Changretta will always come for a Shelby, and a Shelby will always have a gun in the drawer, world without end. But a child is not his father's war. A child is only ever a question the world hasn't answered yet, and the answer is written entirely by the hands that raise him. Tommy Shelby, a man drowning in blood he had spilled himself, looked at the son of his enemy and refused, for once in his violent life, to write the answer everyone expected. He chose mercy over the clean kill, the long, uncertain road over the short, certain one. And a boy who was born to be a knife grew up, instead, into the one thing that could end a war that killing never could. A man who chose, with his own free hands, which house he belonged to. That is the whole of it. The vendetta was never in the blood. It was only ever in the choosing. And the day a Shelby chose differently, the curse that had eaten two families for a generation simply stopped, quietly. The way real endings always come, in this family. At a table, over a long silence, with a knife laid down instead of drawn. Polly lived to see it. That is the gift inside the gift. That in this telling she is there, in 1926, to sit on the end of a frightened boy's bed and promise him no one would come in the dark. And there, years later, to watch him grow into the proof that mercy works. She used to say that this family was good at making graves and bad at making peace. The Changretta boy was the peace she lived to see them make. She never once called it a mistake, not even on the hard nights, not even in the first year when the whole city said Tommy Shelby had gone mad and taken the enemy's child to his own table. She only ever said one thing about it, when anyone asked her why she'd allowed it, that a woman who had lost children to other people's wars was not about to lose one more to her own family's pride. And then she would draw on her cigarette and look at the boy across the room and say nothing else at all. That's how it might have gone. The Shelby story the world never got to see. Birmingham is full of roads not taken, and we walk them here. If you'd ride with us down the next one, leave a name below and tell us whose story to rewrite. Mind how you go.